So this week, Spider-Man Brand New Day started its filming. I want to quick talk about just all of the different things that we already know about the film, and then just some slight hopes on what, we could see in the movie. Let's talk about it. So next summer, we are getting Spider-Man Brand New Day, which is the 4th film in the Tom Holland or Spider-Man series. Now, originally, a lot of people, was kind of up in the air for a while if we were going to get that 4th film, because on a technical note, the 3rd movie does end it pretty well. But I'm so glad that we're getting a 4th movie, because I really, enjoy Tom Holland's take on Spider-Man. And that suit that we got at the very end of No Way Home is definitely worth having a whole movie for. So recently, we've gotten a bunch of new details of the suit, just a bunch of new details about the plot and everything like that. So I'm going to cover all of that. So, if you're kind of in the dark about what exactly is fact or what exactly is just theory, you can kind of get a bigger idea on what is going on there. And real quick before we kind of dive into this, just know that, this at this moment in time, not everything is 100% confirmed, but, at the very least comes from a very reliable source. So just know that kind of going in. Let's go. So starting off with the obvious stuff, a few days ago, I even posted a reaction that we got the new suit and how it looks for Spider-Man Brand New Day. Now, it is almost identical to the one we saw at the end of No Way Home. It has, the lighting that they show in like the little video that they made isn't quite what the other one was, but I'm just guessing that that's probably because he's in a very dark room. It also has some similarities in terms of like the blue and stuff like that to the TASM 2 suit. So if you're a fan of the TASM 2 suit, like I am, I think this will probably be one of the best Spider-Man suits. Yeah. So a rough idea of what the plot will be is that Mr. Negative and Scorpion will be the 2 major villains of this movie. Which I'll kind of describe all of the villains in short and kind of like where they come from in case you're unfamiliar. Bruce Banner will end up, making his way into New York in some fashion. Martin Lee and Scorpion both known for their abilities to kind of like mess with people's head. Mr. Negative's being more of like a spiritual like power kind of in the head, whereas Scorpion is more of like a hallucination type thing. Both of them have the power to kind of manipulate one's psyche. That's the wrong person to be around with Hulk. Because, we've, up to this moment, we've seen Hulk in a very, smart Hulk state of mind and all of that stuff, right? That if they get a hold of him, that won't be good. And that's what I'm guessing is going to happen, because Hulk really is confirmed in this movie, like, he is. I don't really see what other reason he would have in this movie. Now, I do know that Punisher is also going to be in this movie. And I'm guessing that this movie will follow up from the Punisher special presentation that we're supposed to get like in January or February of 2026. Because at the end of Daredevil Born Again, we kind of saw as he like escaped his cage that he was put in by Kingpin's guys. Now it is said that he's going to have like an upgrade, and I heard a lot of people like, oh my god, like he's not going to become like an Iron Man dude. No. They were talking about like he might even have like a tank, which is like hilarious. But he's gonna have bigger guns, bigger everything, and just be awesome. Now the interesting thing to remember about this is that when Hulk sees Spider-Man, he might know who, like, might be like, oh, that's Spider-Man, but he won't know who's under the mask. Even though he already knew that Peter Parker was Spider-Man, he's not gonna know that. That's my understanding of it, being that after No Way Home, everyone does not know who Peter Parker is. So no one will know who Peter Parker is. And it'd be really interesting to see if someone finds out in this movie that, at least he's made a friend. And I could definitely see that happening with like Punisher. That'd be like a really funny dynamic. So hopefully that happens. Let's talk about the villains and just like where they come from and who they are in case you're unfamiliar. So Mr. Negative was a smuggler, a human smuggler from China who was trying to come back over to the US, ended up getting sold to Simon Marshall. And if that name sounds familiar, that is because that is the exact doctor, villain, chemist, whoever you want to call him, that ended up using the D-Light drug for Cloak and Dagger. Well, he was also part of that experiment. and that is how he got his powers. And essentially how his powers work is he has his negative side and he has his light side. His light side works at feast, at least in most iterations, and his darker side is what runs the demon mob, which are his like goons and everything. In No Way Home, we saw feast. It was actually introduced as where Aunt May was working. So I'm wondering if they did that knowing that eventually in the future that was where that was going to lead. We also know Scorpion, Matt Gargan, is going to be in this movie, and he's already been introduced in this universe in Spider-Man Homecoming. Now in that movie, he had a very minor role. He was only, in a few scenes. And there are also a lot of other villains, which I'm going to get to in a second, but I do want to say, because I know some people were talking about this, are the villains in this movie, is it going to be too much? Is it going to be too cluttered? And to that, I say, no, it is not going to be. If you remember in Homecoming, there were a lot of different characters in that movie that were, like, referenced. And I think that's kind of going to be what happens here. Like, we got Shocker. And again, he was only in a few scenes. It was just, like, part of Vulture's, like, squad. We got the Tinkerer. We got, we even got Prowler, technically speaking. He wasn't in his Prowler costume or anything, but it was Aaron Davis. And he even talks about his nephew being Miles Morales. And I don't know, like, I that's one of the many reasons I love Homecoming, is because they were able to build a world and just using a few little references, because obviously they still have to make room for Vulture and the major villains, but it's cool to, like, flesh out your Spider-Man world and know that they do exist in that universe. If you are unfamiliar with who Scorpion is, he was essentially an investigator for J. Jonah Jameson. Pretty much was trying to get photos of Spider-Man and like see who he was. And then J. Jonah Jameson in that universe that he was in ended up like trying to bribe him and say, hey, go get this surgery done and, it'll, give you abilities. You might be able to do your job better, which it eventually ended up turning him into Scorpion, where he lost his mind. But I don't know if that's going to be the backstory that they give him in this movie, because they've already, kind of showed him. So maybe they'll just kind of let it sit. But maybe we will get like a little bit of a reference back to how he actually became Scorpion. Another villain we are getting is Ramrod. Now, I was a little bit unfamiliar with this villain. I had to kind of look him up. Essentially, he is a construction worker who ended up getting hurt and, through some not so nice people that work for him, they ended up making him a cyborg suit, and then used blackmail to basically say, hey, there's actually poison in your suit, and if you don't do what we say, we're gonna kill you. Another villain that might be minor in this movie is Tombstone. Now, a lot of people might know Tombstone from the Spider-Man PlayStation games, or you might even know him from Across the Spider-Verse or Into the Spider-Verse. I forget. I think he was in both, maybe just Into. He was also in Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, which just came out, I believe, at the beginning of this year. We got to see Lonnie Lincoln and just how that whole thing works. So if you're unfamiliar with the character, definitely go check out Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. And another villain they have talked about possibly being in this, and again, all of these villains that I'm talking about are not just theory. They have been, at least somewhat of a verified rumor from Daniel RPK on Twitter and everything. Go check him out if you want to see the sources where I'm getting all of this from. But another one is Tarantula. Tarantula was kind of like a fascist fighter, and essentially he was fighting in South Africa, trying to fight people that were, it was a fascist regime. He was picked up by the Delvadian government, and just for being too violent, they decided they had to let him go, just because his methods were too insane. He eventually made his way to New York, where he ended up getting picked up by, the crime, that how one does in New York. You always find crime, you always find your way into bad things. And ended up just becoming a Spider-Man villain, or, having too many run-ins with Spider-Man where he became the official Tarantula Spider-Man villain. And then the last one that we have, at least somewhat confirmed, is Boomerang. His real name is Fred Myers. He was an Australian boy who, was really good at baseball and, very exceptional, had a great arm, kind of similar to Bullseye in that way. But he ended up, taking bribes, getting involved with the wrong people, and then eventually coming to America, you know, where he got employed and, you know, eventually became a full-on criminal. I think the plot of this movie sounds really good. I like the idea of Bruce Banner, you know, finally not Smart Hulk anymore, because I think that for a long time that's what we've all wanted, is to see Hulk actually rage out and just go crazy. And it seems like we might actually get that here. There should also be a note, because the director of Shang-Chi is directing this movie, so you can expect some pretty cool fight action sequences. And just, you know, honestly, I think Shang-Chi is one of the better movies in the MCU. I think for me it's like top 12, which, you know, considering how many MCU projects there are, but I think he's gonna do a great job. I have full faith in this movie. I've been excited for this movie for a long time. And the last thing I'll talk about is just one of the things that I would love to see in this movie. Now, this is not confirmed in any way. At the end of No Way Home, we saw that Ned and MJ do not know who Peter is anymore. They are completely oblivious to who he is. They do not exist in his life anymore. Now, I'm wondering if it's just like, it's pretty much as if he never existed to them, right? In the comics, Ned does become Hobgoblin. And I know a lot of people, including myself, want that to happen. The only way I could see that happening is if they make him like a villain for the third movie, if they end up even doing a third movie, because they did a trilogy with Homecoming, Far From Home, No Way Home. I would love to see a brand new trilogy. I don't know how, you know, Tom Holland is with all that. I don't know all the specifics and inner workings, but the essential story that I would love to see is in this movie, you know, we see Ned where he, you know, maybe he's getting, you know, doesn't fit in. He, you know, now that he does not have Peter, Peter can, you know, still see and check up on him, but, you know, he won't know that he doesn't even know who Peter is. And I would love to see, you know, Ned have more, maybe a worse life now that Peter isn't in it. And, you know, Peter maybe comes to this realization that maybe it wasn't the best thing, even though he saved everyone, you know, that he permanently stopped talking to them after he made, you know, his whole spell with Doctor Strange. And I would love to see, you know, through the first film and through the second film, him, you know, get involved with the wrong people and later become Hobgoblin. I think it would be a great idea for a storyline, you know, seeing Peter do the thing that he thought was protecting his friends, become the very thing that leads one of them to become a villain. And I think that would be a really cool story to explore. So let me know what you guys all thought about, you know, the details for Spider-Man Brand New Day. Again, I think this movie is probably one of my more anticipated for next year. I think it, you know, has a lot of good things going for it. And just, you know, the fact that Punisher's going to be in it, Hulk's going to be in it. It seems like a good time. So hopefully it does well. And I will see you guys in the next video. Peace, Colonels.